Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start our video with the story about Brenda, who became a supervisor for a while and also tried to mess with our OP. Let's see how it turns out. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Have a nice weekend! I work in an office, and at the time I was the new guy who only worked part-time, taking shifts here and there when needed. I could do pretty much anything, and did it well, but often had to ask around for extra shifts to make ends meet. One day, our supervisor went on short-term disability leave after an accident, and an assistant, let's call her Brenda, took over the job, which included the scheduling duties. Brenda was easily overwhelmed, and we believe that she was too proud to admit that she needed help. She had to plan the schedule for 5 teams, and I'd often tell her that I'd be available for more shifts to cover X or Y, as the slots were clearly empty. She was always pretty dismissive, and most times I'd end up not working more. People tried to work around her mishaps, so there was never any direct impact on the overall production. One time I noticed that a lone position was on the weekend, that nobody wants to do when that lady was sick or away, was not being backfilled, even though it was essential to have someone in that chair. Hoping for extra shifts, I sent Brenda a casual email to bring to her attention the fact that the shift was not filled and if she had any plans for that yet. Her response was an extra long email on work ethic and respect for my colleagues' time, that I'm new here and I should learn my place to stop begging for extra shifts all the time, and that she had nothing else for me that week. Duly noted, ma'am. My last day at the office that week was Wednesday, and I knew that the shifts had still not been filled. When I left, I wished everyone a nice weekend, including Brenda. See you next week! It's important to mention that I was on call. They couldn't just put me on the schedule and expect me to show up. They'd have to confirm with me beforehand. I got so many calls on Saturday, about 30 minutes after the beginning of that shift that was not being covered, asking where I was, why I wasn't in, that error alerts were being sent all over the country because no one was there to do the job. I told the weekend manager that I was out of town as I wasn't on the schedule when I left on Wednesday. They'd need to take it up with Brenda. Monday morning, I was called in a senior manager's office. I was told that they were giving me a written warning because I didn't show up to work that weekend, and it caused a lot of trouble for other managers. I pulled the email thread and was able to prove that I warned Brenda that a shift was not being filled, that I would be available if needed, but that Brenda made it clear she didn't need me. They then checked the log to see when the schedule was last changed, and yup, Friday afternoon, long after I was gone. I made it clear that she made no attempt to try to contact me. The senior manager apologized, and I was able to return to work. I don't believe Brenda was specifically punished, as we're allowed to make mistakes, it happens, but she was eventually demoted. She retired probably a year after the incident. I ended up being promoted to full-time shortly after. And as it turns out, 10 years later, I'm now office supervisor, doing a much better job at managing schedules. And our second story. Planning on getting petty with newly moneyless millionaire. Okay, so about a year ago, my stepfather-in-law inherited $4 million from a relative who'd recently passed. From day one of them getting the money, my in-laws have acted as if they are the G.D. Rockefellers and that they worked their hands to the bone to earn the money. Neither worked any meaningful jobs, and neither held a job for more than 5 years in their entire lives. But so what? I avoid them and they avoid me, and I'm fine with it. Now, these are not exactly smart people. The first thing they did was run out and get a line of credit and start to spend houses, cars, watches, TVs, you name it. And during this spree of credit-fueled shopping, they were outbid on a house by a young couple from out of state. Their reaction, and this is no bullcrap, damn millennials, probably had to have mommy and daddy give them the money. Let that soak in. 2 people who inherit millions talking crap about someone else getting their money the same way. But anyway, back on track. I just wanted to illustrate the mindset I'm dealing with. So anyway, one day my son and I are invited to watch football at their house, and I figure, what the hell, little boy's day. They have arcade machines and a pool table and all kinds of fun things, so we head up. Now granted, my son is a rambunctious 3-year-old and gets rough with things sometimes, but nothing out of the ordinary for a 3-year-old. As a matter of fact, the only thing he's ever broken was our TV, and that was partially my fault because you shouldn't play catch in the house, And I know that, and we did it anyway. But once again, back on track. So this guy who hopped into the family and wants my kids to treat him like grandpa and all this looks at me and says, "You better keep him under control. I know he doesn't listen, and there are things up here you just can't afford to replace." Now, I'm not a rich man, but I'm not exactly poor either. But I have been dirt poor before, and I've seen some crap and bounced back, and I do really value what I have and appreciate the work put in and all of that. But at the end of the day, they're just things. If they get broken, oh well, crap happens. Move on with your life. But this comment just stuck with me. The way he said it, the implication that my kid was some wild misbehaving troglodyte who couldn't be controlled, just sat wrong with me. So after this and a few of his MAGA 2020 catchphrases, I was done for the day and headed home disgusted but thankful to no longer be there. Flash forward to last night. My wife gets a phone call. It's her mom. They're bankrupt. The stock market crash has pretty much dried up their monthly income from their investments. So with no money coming in and everything they own purchased on a line of credit, they're done. I sat in amazement as my wife hung up. I was grinning from ear to ear and asked when the next time they'd be down was. She said she didn't know, but asked why. I told her that as soon as they walked into the house next time they came, that I felt it was imperative that I relay to my stepfather-in-law that it was now my house that was full of things that he couldn't afford to replace, and that he needs to be extra careful, but not to worry, because if he pulls himself up by his bootstraps, he too can one day have a nice 3-bedroom home with all the amenities. And our last story. You pay for it, one way or another. Our story is from years ago. I used to work for some kind of full-stack agency as a coder, doing websites, desktop applications, and integrations for customers. Life was good, and it even got better. After managing to provide an important customer with 5-star hotels all around my country with a great website, with integration to their ERP, and also mobile solutions which didn't exist then in my country, a headhunter had found me. He offered nearly triple the salary I was getting, and it was impossible to say no to that. I informed my employer, gave him a generous notice of a month so I could wrap up the last projects. Let me warn you that I was a very young and incredibly trusting person then. When my employer told me there were some problems and I'd have to receive my last salary with the next one, I accepted. Last day of my job, when he asked me to sign the paper that declares I had nothing indebted to me by that company, I signed it. I was a moron. I was young. They never paid, of course. Even though being stiffed that way was a lump in my throat, I tried to gulp it down. I worked hard at my new job, trying to prove that I could do better than I did before. But another sneak attack from my ex-employer was the last drop. One day I arrived at the job, my new employer called me into his room. He explained that my ex-employer reached out to him and told him that I was lazy, a liar, worthless, and it wasn't worth the effort to have me as an employee because they were about to sue me so I wouldn't be able to do any work with all the legal stuff. I was beet red. I apologized for being a nuisance and I said I'd clear my desk instantly. He laughed cheerfully and said, "You've been working for me for 2 weeks. You completed 2 high-quality websites and half of a desktop app. I'll cut my own throat before I fire you." Still, I was so shaken that he had to give permission to me to leave early. It was Friday anyway. I went home and cried, not because of sorrow, but rage. I couldn't touch them. I just couldn't. I couldn't? That's the day I fired up Google and typed "how to hack" for the first time in my life. The first response was a forum in my native language. I started reading and, gosh, I had a lot to read. Coding and hacking are, even though they share the same expertise, vary so much when it comes to details. I confess it was then impossible for me to think like them, but thankfully the forum crawled with helpful technical tutorials telling me hows and whys of every exploit I could use. As I said, I was young and a moron. Back then I had my own mini admin framework that I used in every website I made, and I just realized there was a crucial mistake I made in calls to create new records, users, pages, news items, galleries, everything. I wasn't checking the authorization at all. It would nearly be impossible for a hacker to use this because he wouldn't know or get exposed to the exact call. But I knew it. It was about 6 a.m. when I finished reading. I used public transportation to go to the other end of the city, found an internet cafe where the young attendant didn't care about IDs and which didn't have any security cameras. I sat in a corner and started breaking every single website I made for them. There was one about pastry materials, a website consisting of over 1,000 ingredients. In the main page, a random assortment from each ingredient type would be shown as a gallery. I replaced about 20 of them with images of, all kinds of waste. Only 20, so a viewer who got used to it wouldn't realize the error until some time has passed. I made the chief physician of a hospital page the angel of death itself, with images and a special bio. People don't look into physician bio pages, so I was sure it wouldn't be found out for long. I made an announcement in an ultra-nationalist Party A's website that their number one enemy would be giving a speech. In a local newspaper page, I made all old videos instead linked to the famous Loituma video, where an anime girl spins a leek in her hand. Slowly, a few websites a day, I broke every single website I made for them, approximately 60 websites or so. The backlash from customers seems to have been furious, in a domino effect. He lost his customers' trust and his references, which simply means everything for this kind of job. Once the proud owner of one of the best agents in the region, now tries to work in a tiny office making a living doing third-rate websites with his meager skill. Even though I never met him during this period, one of my friends was working under him until the last moment. I loved listening to his struggle to find out how I did it. They knew I did it, they just had no way of proving it, while losing more and more customers every day from my friend. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.